So today's not going to be an adventure kind of day. Today is going to be more of a tooling day to replace some parts on the Toyota Tundra. Today we're going to be replacing the axles, the stock axles, CV axles, and we're going to go ahead and replace all the rotors on the truck, on all four corners. Well, let's go. Okay, so real quick before I go ahead, I'll just show y'all what I'm installing before I go ahead and start ripping the truck apart. So right now, I'm going to replace all four corners rotors with StopTech rotors. So I've opted for just the slotted rotors. I didn't get the drilled due to since I off-road a lot. Didn't want pebbles and rocks to get stuck in the drilled areas, so it's a pretty good finish. Highly recommended by some co-workers that actually race cars, so went that route with StopTech. And then I'm going to go ahead and replace my stock axles with rebuilt CVJ's axles. So I went the route of getting the high angled boot, silicone boots. So this is the top of the line one they rebuild. It's about $250. Put a down deposit on the core for your stock ones. I also have to remove the stock ones on the truck, then send it back, and I'll get refunded partially for those. But yes, so CVJ axles, which are OEM axles that are just rebuilt with better silicone boots for higher angled lift trucks. So, and some StopTech brake pads and some stainless steel brake hoses to replace the rubber hoses. So I'll just go ahead and start removing the wheels. Okay, right now I got the wheel off. I'm running a Bora 3/4 inch wheel spacer, so I have to remove that so I can get to the dust cover. Remove the dust cover so I can get to the lug nut for the CV axle. And if you are wearing a wheel spacer and it is pretty stiff, you can tell that the rotors do rotate, so you can just jam a flathead screwdriver, any screwdriver in there. It doesn't take much force to just kind of break it. But another quick tip, if your wheel spacer is actually seized onto the wheel hub, you can actually get some kind of leverage. I just pretty much put a bar across and just put 2 bolts back on, and it's going to push that down. It's going to push the bolt from the back side down and actually pull the whole wheel spacer out. So if you guys have a seized aftermarket wheel spacer, that's a quick tip on how to get it off the hub when it's like seized all the way around. Okay, so once you get the dust cover off, you just go ahead and remove this cotter pin right here, and then you'll need a special socket. It is a 39mm. It's a pretty big size. You can find it on Amazon. It's not too expensive. I believe it was like $10 to $15 the last time I had to get it. But anytime you do this, you'll definitely need this. So I just recommend just buying it. It's so cheap, and especially if you wheel a lot, you're bound to break CV axles and replace rotors and shocks. So it's just better to go ahead and just get it super cheap. So what you want to kind of do is kind of wiggle this little spindle out and turn, and kind of push in on the CV axle. And just like that, the whole CV axle comes from out on the spindle side. Give it a little push and twist, and it should clear all the way out. So we got the CV axle out on the spindle side. So what we need to do now is come in here and pop. There's an inner lip, kind of literally a couple of millimeters from the edge, but there's like this centimeter wide lip, and you can take a crowbar and a sledgehammer and just give it a light tap on that edge. Once you get the CV axle out, it should just start draining a little bit. I had a little bit of leakage, so it came out, but it's not as much as it would normally be. But yeah, just kind of let it drain a little bit, and I guess you kind of want to go ahead and loosen your I guess if you guys could go ahead and undo the lower drain bolt right there in the center of your front diff and drain it all out beforehand. But so I'll just go ahead and kind of explain why I'm redoing the CV axles. I had originally had a ripped boot back in the day, and then when I went to go rechange my the King shocks, upgrading about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago from this day, I decided to go ahead and tear apart the OEM axles and repair the boots myself. I had literally taken apart the axles and actually went about and ordering SDHQ, they're racing CV boots, and that literally cost me so much downtime last year just due to them sending the wrong clamps for the CV boots, and then switching the clamps on me, so it requires two different clamps, two different tools that you can't find locally anywhere. So you actually have to go online and order these tools. So that was a big debacle. It ended up costing me about $1,200 of downtime, missing work, car rentals for a week, and then it was a big headache. And I tend now to just try to get all the complete parts, not to do it myself, and just have everything ready to go and take it out, pop in the new stuff, and you don't waste too much downtime. Just, oh my god, dealing with ripping apart the CV axle and the boots, the messiest job I've ever done in my life, working on this truck, or any vehicle in itself. The messiest, the smelliest grease ever. It was just a hassle. So now, I mean, if I ever rip a CV boot, it's like a $5 boot, I mean, I'll just go ahead and buy a whole new axle. It's just so much easier, it saves time, and just, I just don't, time is I have very little these days, and I feel like most people do. So why waste it being frustrated on a little part, on a $5 part, when you just spend like $100, $200 and make sure it actually works. So, done with my rant now. We'll just get back to the installing the CV axles. So to kind of prep the end of the CV axles, you need to go ahead and put grease. I'm going to go ahead and put some CV2 red line grease just on the splines on either end. This side, the red silicone silicone boot is actually for the inside axle or inside a joint. So make sure this goes on the inside towards the diff. And this side has that little C-clamp ring. So for a little trick to get this in and not catch as it like hangs from the bottom here, is to actually turn it around where the C is up and the opening is down on it. So it kind of sits down and just kind of allow it to kind of squeeze in a little better without fighting it with the C upside down. And it hangs down on the axle and you're just kind of beating on that C clamp. So just a little trick, flip the C clip upside down. And yep, same with this side, just prep it. There's nothing on this side, just a hole for the cotter pin. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and stick the axle in. So what you want to do, the trick for the sliding the CV axle in, it's kind of heavy and awkward because there's not much room in here. But if you get the spline started into the diff housing, just kind of get that straight, and then take a kind of a 1 pound mallet, just kind of tap on the other end. Just tap on this end. Just give it a gently tap, and it should just slowly start scooting over. So you really shouldn't have any major issue. And then you just go ahead and kind of maneuver this spline around to the wheel housing, and just tighten the nut onto it. Put your cotter pin, dust cover over it, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave this off right now and go to the other side, do that whole axle. Then I'm gonna hurry up and switch in the new rotors and brake pads. So alright guys, day 2. I got the truck finished up. I actually had to kind of skip past showing you how to y'all install the rotors for the front end. So this is kind of already done. Okay, first you really want to go to the right side first. My bad, the left side, the driver's side of the truck first. And we're going to tackle this side first due to when we're going to adjust the e-brake. We want to adjust this side first anyway, so go ahead and change the rotor on this side and we'll make the adjustments. So once you get the brake caliper off, you're going to remove the 2 bolts on the back side of the brake caliper that holds onto the wheel hub on both those, and it should be a 17mm socket. Once you get that off, slide the whole caliper off. You can lay it on the back. It's rubber hose, so it doesn't matter. So now, to do the adjustment of the emergency e-brake, you're going to have to put the truck in neutral. So when the truck's in neutral, this truck is not in park. There's nothing keeping it from rolling. So what you want to do is make sure, safety first always, is that for me right now, my parking lot is actually sloped downwards towards the front of the truck right now. So I'm parked up against the curve and I have some wheel chocks just in case it rolls backwards. And I have a jack stand already in the jack, and the other tire's already down on the ground to keep it planted. So you want to make sure you have to do this in neutral and make sure the truck is chocked, because you don't want, the last thing you want this thing, the whole truck is to roll. You need to get this tire spinning, because when you're in park, it locks up the rear from the transmission back is what's in park. But once you have this off, and you want to go ahead and kind of readjust your emergency brakes. So what you have to do is you have to find this little star on the bottom of the emergency brakes. How you can tell this is on the driver's side is the emergency line brakes will be 180 degrees of where star will be 180 degrees where the parking emergency brakes will come into the hub. So on the driver's side, it'll be towards your 5 o'clock, and on the passenger side, it will be at the 7 o'clock position. So, and you can align it on this major hole. We'll have a rubber plug. Pop that out, put that at the 5 o'clock position, and then if it's too tight to get off, you can actually, if you take this and spin the star down, spinning the star down will loosen, pull these shoes in. It'll release some of the tension if you have too much on the emergency brakes. And when we go to tighten it in a second, you want to roll this thing in. And all you do is you use a flathead screwdriver and stick in the hole, and you just kind of spin it up and down whichever direction you need to go. But right now, putting the new Softec rotors in, we want to make sure that the 2 shoes are touching this block. We want to adjust it where it's just barely touching. It's touching, but just barely. It's not where it's like you loosened it so much it's just sitting there. But we want to just, if we were to tighten it a little bit more, it would just start pulling off. And that's what we want, is to be touching and just be barely pulling off. But we want to make sure when you put the rotor on that you start to stick it on, and it's just, you could barely get it on. That's the point of tension. You want the shoe to be tightened where you could just barely kind of slip it on, where it's not just too easy, and it's not where the point where you can't get it on. So you were able to slip that on. So once you have that adjusted, we're going to go back to the main emergency brake line up front on the driver's side, and I'll show you in a second how to adjust it. But ultimately, we want that scenario where it's barely tight enough where it's touching, and then when we adjust it, we want to make a gap. When we adjust the line underneath the driver's seat, we want to make a gap where it's like a 1/32 of an inch, so just microscopically barely open when we adjust that emergency brake. So if you run that step, tighten it to where it's barely get the rotors on. Take it off, adjust it up front underneath the driver's seat. I'll show you in a second. And we want to make sure there's a 1/32 inch gap, or just a microscopic gap between these two shoes, the right and left shoe on this block. Right now, this is your emergency brake line. This side is actually the front of the truck, this side's in the back. But what we want to do is there's this nut we need to adjust and tighten it where we stretch this bolt out this way. So we need to loosen the stop nut and adjust this nut until we on the backside emergency brake on the left side of this frame of this picture right now, where it's 1/32 of an inch. So, and this is kind of like midway of the truck, so this is where like the main pillar, if you were looking for the outside, the pillar of the truck where the two front doors separate, it's practically on this point right here. So this is kind of towards the middle of the truck, and this is what we want to adjust. So once you have that 1/32 or that microscopic gap between there, so I had it when I went and adjusted the emergency brake underneath the cab a second ago. I pretty much had to adjust it pretty much 5/8 of an inch down that bolt, around 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. So you got quite a bit turning just to get this smidge of adjustment. So once you have that, you can go ahead and start putting your rotors on, and then I'll show you the next step once it gets on. You want to go ahead and install the new rotor, or what the existing rotor you had on it. And when you do, you want to make sure this plug hole, the rubber grommet you pull out in the existing and put back in here, lines up with that star on the underneath side. So once you get it on, line up the star, slide the rotor on, and what you want to do now is locate that star in there and flip it up so the star is actually spinning inside towards the wheel, so kind of from this side an up motion, and keep flicking it until you can't turn it much anymore where it becomes extremely hard, and then test to see if you can spin the rotors with your hand, and you really shouldn't at all. So once you get to that point, you want to go back in there with your flathead screwdriver, find the star, and you want to back it off 7 clicks. So 7 little flicks down, and once you do the 7 flicks, that should be the perfect setting on this rotor, on the emergency brake adjustment, and that should be good. So this is the driver's side. So this whole process, what we just did, you will mimic this process on the other side of what we did to this hub, but the adjustment underneath the cab was one and done. It was just to kind of fine tune it once the whole beginning process of the step. Once you adjust that, you don't need to touch that anymore. And use a 12mm wrench, if I didn't say that earlier. But once you have it all adjusted and on, remember 7 clicks down, and that should be the perfect setting. And then when we go to the other side, the passenger side, all you have to do is worry about the setting it to be able to slide it on and making sure it has that little gap. And once you get the rotor on, flip it all the way up till it's super tight, and you can't turn it with the whole rotor with your hand on the other side, and then you back it off 7 clicks, and that should be a perfect setting on how to adjust your emergency brakes. Okay guys, finally got done with the truck, installing the new CVJ axles and installing the new StopTech rotors with the StopTech pads. Just to quickly show you how you had everything together. Bleeding the line was a little more difficult. I guess I wouldn't say very difficult, but just a very messy job if you don't have the right hose fitting. So I would really recommend check up some YouTube videos and look at the right hosing sizes and bleed it, because I'm not going to show you a video of what I did because it was kind of messy and kind of got all over the place. And brake fluid, you really don't want to get brake fluid on anything. It will strip your paint super easily, so be sure to wear gloves and don't touch the truck at all or your vehicle when doing bleeding the brakes or dealing with brake fluid in general. But yes, the truck is done. Emergency brake works really good. And then the heating procedure, usually for new rotors or racing style rotors, the slotted or drilled, is usually you bring it up from around, bring the speed of a vehicle up to 40 miles an hour and then stomp on the brakes. Stomp on it till you get down to 10. You want to do it very rapid, and you want to do that process about 4 or 5 times. Then you want to bring it up to 50 miles an hour and stomp on the brakes again to about 10 miles an hour. Again, repeat that 4 to 5 times, and then take it up to 60. Very rapidly bring it back down just a couple more times, 2 or 3 times, and that should be pretty much good. And what you're doing with that is you're breaking in the new pads on the rotors, and you're actually embedding parts of the pad material into the rotor, and so the pad actually starts gripping the residue, leftover residue of the rotors on the pad on the rotors, and what's actually giving them a lot of the good bite when you get the braking. So that's what you're really trying to do, and you're also heating up the rotors, so it's kind of in the braking process of it. But yes, the CV axles are done. CVJ axles are in. Everything's good. The popping noise is eliminated. So the popping noise was bad CV axles from the stock ones, so that got rid of that. And then the pulsating of my steering wheel, I thought it was a bad steering rack, which really just ended up being, which I kind of diagnosed it and kind of determined it was warped rotors. So if you are getting a slight like jerk in the steering wheel, and then like when you go slower speeds after you brake and it starts really pulling the truck, it's usually probably due to the rotors being warped, or your pads are catching and cylinders not like kind of releasing afterwards. Because I talked to a lot of forums, got on the Facebook forums pages, and a lot of people were saying there's tie rods, the joints of the tie rods were going bad, which causes it to be loose, and you get the wheels shaking and all that. But I determined it wasn't any of that. So yes, got the truck done, ready to get wheeling. Now the next process, I guess I'll go into discussion. I'm about to recompound, polish and wax the entire truck. And along with that, I'm going to be removing the Black Pearl decal, and something else will be coming up pretty soon. So stay tuned on future tooling and wrenching days, and I guess cosmetics of a Tundra, but a Black Pearl. So like and subscribe if you like the videos. Comment down below if you have any questions. I'll be glad to answer or help anything. If you want to leave a negative comment, leave negative comments. I'm sorry if I didn't help you at all, but yes, thank you for following.